Greetings everyone, and welcome to my new timeline video. Today is March 28th, 2014. This video will include all of the new information that I've found since the last timeline video. The first thing I want to go over are the verses out of the Bible that I base my findings on. Genesis chapter 1 verse 14, "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs. And the lesser night to rule the night," that's the moon, "he made the stars also." That shows us that the lights in the firmament of the heaven are the sun, the moon, and the stars, and they are to be used for signs. Now, if anyone is telling you that this is astrology, do not believe it. This is astronomy. Jesus says in Luke 21:25, "And there shall be signs in the sun, and in the moon, and in the stars." Nowhere in the Bible does it tell us that we are not supposed to look for signs, or that these signs are for a select group of people or for a certain period of time. Psalm 19 is a psalm of David. "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard." There are many references in the Bible to constellations and stars. Job chapter 38 verse 31. "Canst thou bind the sweet influences of Pleiades, or loose the bands of Orion?" Pleiades is a group of stars in the bull, and Orion is a constellation. Verse 32. "Canst thou bring forth Mazzaroth in his season?" Mazzaroth is constellation. "Or canst thou guide Arcturus with his sons?" Arcturus is a star in the constellation of Bootes. Here are the four main signs in the heavens that are talked about in the Bible. The word wonder in the Strong's Concordance is sign, and many of your Bibles will say, "And there appeared a great sign in heaven. And there appeared another sign in heaven. And I saw another sign in heaven. And there shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven." These four signs have been found, and they are on my timeline. This is the original timeline for my first video, and this is the new timeline with all the new information. If you are having problems reading anything here, go to your YouTube settings down here on the right hand side and set it up to high definition, and then wait for it to load, and you should be able to see everything very clearly. You can also pause the screen if you want to study this timeline. All of the signs that I show are screenshots from the astronomy program Stellarium. It is a free download. You can download this for free, and you can go to each one of these dates, wherever they are, and you can see these signs. Now, I have added to some of these screenshots. I painted in the crosses, and I added the lines for the constellations. All of the little rectangular pictures with the names in them are my videos. You can find them at I Go Too Slow for You to See Me at YouTube. If you type in I Go Too into YouTube search engine, it will bring me up. My timeline is not to scale. It is in chronological order though. Some of these signs are connected below the timeline to other things happening, other information, or other videos. All of the signs and all of the day counts are calculated on the Hebrew calendar only. Please feel free to download all of my videos and share them with others. Okay, now we can get some formalities out of the way. William Tapley found this sign a few years ago. Mark Biltz found the blood red moons in 2008. And Rick Larson found the main body of the Star of Bethlehem. I have built upon his work because he missed a few things, including this little peach of a sign right here. Everything else on this timeline is my work or my conclusions. If anything is wrong, you can blame me. Now, I originally got into all of this back in 2011. At the end of 2010, my work ran out, and I had the first 4 months of 2011 with no work. I spent this time in the Bible trying to figure out a bunch of things. There was so much misinformation out there on the internet that I had to do a study on my own to figure a bunch of this stuff out. At that time, I was looking for rapture verses or last trump verses or anything that would tell me timing of these things, and that's when I came across the Revelation 12 sign. Fire Charger had a video about it. Scotty had a video about it. He's from Eternal Rhythm Flow. But at that time, I didn't think we were supposed to be in that kind of stuff. I thought that was astrology, which meant that I had to do a bunch more research to find out what the Bible says about these things. After a good amount of research, I came to the conclusion that you need to learn how to separate astrology from astronomy. They are two different things. Over the next couple of years, I found out about the blood moon tetrads that we've had. I found out about Bethlehem Star. I found out about a few other different things, but it wasn't until 2013 that I started looking for other signs. It was right at the beginning of 2013 that Scotty came out with a video talking about the fiery red dragon, and Andy over at Humble Horse also came out with a video about the same thing. Now, they have both done some good work, but I did not agree with their findings. I even spent some time trying to confirm what they had shown, and it just didn't work. I mean, no offense, I just did not see a fiery red dragon standing in front of the woman. I also could not find the rest of the verses out of Revelation 12, 3-6 that talk about that fiery red dragon. I couldn't find the 7 heads, the 10 horns, the 7 crowns, the 7 blasphemous names that come out of Daniel. I also couldn't find out how his tail drew down 1/3 of the stars of the sky. So I went back to the Revelation 12, 1 and 2 great sign, and I started from there, and I came across the sun standing in front of the woman as she's about to give birth. Now the sun is fiery, it's red. I would call it a dragon, but I had to do some research to find out whether the rest of those verses fit with the sun. Now the sun fits with all the rest of those verses, and I made this video. That's my first video, and it is really rough, and I'm sorry for that. But in that, I show how the sun fulfills all those verses, and the sun is the fiery dragon. Now you can see right here the sun standing right in front of the woman, the fiery dragon, as she's about to give birth. Jupiter is 2 days from being birthed at this point. Now at this point I got to thinking, somewhere 1,260 days before this stuff, we should be able to find the start of the tribulation. That came out to April 12, 2014, and there's nothing there. That is because that's not the right verse to show us where the start of the tribulation is. That would be Daniel 12:11. In Daniel 12:11 it says, "From the time you see the sacrifice taken away and the abomination of desolation set up, there's 1,290 days." Daniel 9:27 says that this is a 7-year period. If we take 1,290 days and add it to 1,230 days, that is a 7-year period. Anyone who's using 1,260 to start is off by 30 days. If we go back 1,260 days, it does not let us fulfill Acts 2:20 or Joel 2:31. The nearest blood moon before April 12th of 2014 is 2.5 years before that, at the end of 2011. For these 2 verses to be fulfilled, it needs to be a lot closer than 2.5 years. Now if we go back 1,230 days, that lets us fulfill these 2 verses, and it lands on May 14th, in which we have a sign up in the heavens happening on that day. It's Israel's 66th birthday, its 2nd Passover. It's all of this coincidence, and that's just a little bit too much to not take a closer look at. Now my second video was the Tribulation Start video, in which I talk about these things. This is one of my other videos, and this is a Tribulation Start sign. Now this sign is a year-long sign, kind of similar to the Bethlehem Star video. Bethlehem Star is a year-long sign. This sign is also part of about a year-long sign. Each of these signs last different lengths. The blood red moons is about 2 years long. This one over here is a couple of years long, but some of them are just hours long or even minutes. Like this one is only a few minutes long before the moon moves out of alignment. Now we are already in this sign, and the main part is fast approaching. After I found this sign, I knew that if this could be the start of the tribulation, we should be able to find the sign of the Son of Man, Matthew 24:30, about 7 years in the future. But that would be in May, and there was nothing happening in May. But a few months before that, I found this. Now, if you don't know what Jesus' sign is, there's a bunch of clues right here on your screen. Jesus' sign is the cross. He's not known by any other sign. Okay? He's not known by a comet. It's a cross. So when Matthew 24:30 says the sign of the Son of Man is going to be in heaven, it's going to be a cross that shows up. It's not going to be something else. Now, after I had found this cross, I knew that Matthew 24:29, the verse right before this, had a solar eclipse in it. So I had to go look for this, and it was 2 months before this, and that did not make sense to me. And on top of that, I'd done a little bit of math to find out where Daniel 12:11 ended up, and it was the middle of January, and I totally thought I had something wrong. I mean, we had 3 different endings there, and that did not make any sense to me. So I stopped looking for, I didn't even look for any sign right here. So at that point, I was looking for Revelation 15:1, the 7 angels. I could not find them, and I thought maybe that might help clear some stuff up. And I was goofing around one day, and I thought, I'm going to go look at the Star of Bethlehem, because I'd never really looked it over before. And when I started looking at it, I saw Venus get circled by Mercury. And it just kind of like popped in my head that maybe this is what the Magi saw to tell them whose star this was. So I kept playing around in Stellarium, and I watched Venus go into retrograde motion, and it looked like it stopped in the sky, which is exactly what the Bible says. It says his star stands in the sky. So I was still messing around in Stellarium, and I saw the sun, the moon, and a bunch of the wandering stars all come together in one spot. Now whenever that happens, you kind of take a closer look at it because it's kind of rare. And I looked it over, and it's like, that's another cross. So I got to make a few more videos. But at that time, I was still looking for these 7 angels. These 7 angels, I needed to be able to tie everything together. When I finally found them, I made this video, but I was really looking at this guy. I wanted to see where this guy landed because I had already had a scenario played out that I needed about a year. When it wound up on being June 21st, it was just like, it did not make sense. I didn't think there was enough time to make everything work together at that point. That left less than 8 months between this bowl and this cross. And that just, man, I thought everything was wrong at this point. But I had this point in time, so I figured I'd go ahead and work with it and see if I could figure it out. Now, what I was trying to do at that point was get this sign to match up with the longest day count, which was 1335. It just made sense to me that the last sign we see should line up with the last day, which would be the longest day we have in the Bible. Now, the only way I could make those 2 days line up is through Matthew 24:22's shortened days. Those days shall be shortened. So at that point, you can kind of do quick math in your head. Taking off 8 hours of the day would take off a third of the day, and that did not work, and I didn't think 6 hours would be enough. And the book of Revelation is full of so many sevens that the first amount that I actually started on was 7 hours, and that worked out perfect. Taking 7 hours off each day from this point made the 1335 come back in time and line right up with this sign. After I figured that out, I made this video. If you want to understand how the days are shortened, go watch this video. It's only 12 minutes long. After I found out that this 7-hour shorter day made the 1335 line up with this sign, I could then go back to the Daniel 12:11 and see where it lined up. Using this same 17-hour day from this point I then figured the math again, and the 1290 from Daniel 12:11 came back in time and landed on January 13th. So at that point, I opened up Stellarium again and started looking around. And I found this little sign, which I want to remind you is exactly 7 years to the day after this sign here, which is kind of scary. But this sign fits perfect with the end of the 7 years, and I talk about that in this video. At that point, I had 3 of the day counts. I had the 1335 and the 1290, which were working through a 17-hour day, and then I had 1230, which we got out of Daniel 12:11 being a 7-year period. But all of that was just speculation. No one was going to believe that. There had to be something else that confirmed that I was on the right track, and that had to be a day count that went from the same signs out to those other signs, and they could not have that shortened day in it. They had to be exact to the day, but they had to be without the shortened days from our perspective now, where we do not see this earthquake that changes everything. Now that I had this January 13th as a set date that I could work with, I then went to Revelation 13:5 and I plugged in 42 months, and that comes out exact to the day from this sign to this sign. I then moved over to try to get something to line up with Daniel 12:12, and I got into the time, times, and half a time. Now I told you in the past that this was 2 days short of being exactly 3.5 years, and I'm kind of happy to say I was wrong about that. That has been bugging me ever since I told you that in a previous video. This time, times, and half a time, counting from this sign to this sign, is exact to the day. I had to rethink about how I was telling you that, in that we count from sign to sign with these numbers, and I was only counting from one part of the sign to the other sign, and that's not the way you do it. You got to count the whole sign to the whole sign, and if you do that, it is exactly to the day, time, times, and half a time, 3.5 years between these two signs. At that point, we had 4 of the day counts working. We had 2 of them coming to this sign and 2 going to this sign, one from each perspective, one with the 17-hour day and one without. But we had nothing going to this sign. And I, at that point, knew that Revelation 11:2 and 11:3 had to be coming from this point. Now I knew that this was 1 month before this sign, which is counting from this point, which meant that 1 month before this sign, we should have some pretty big sign that I can count to, and that just turned out to be a total solar eclipse. It is exactly 42 months from this sign to this sign. At that point, I tried to get the 1,260 days to work from this point in time, and it didn't do that. But that actually makes sense in that Revelation 11:2 and 11:3 are talking about 2 different things. And if Revelation is chronological, like I have told you in the past, then the 1,260 days has to start its count after this point. But it also had to start before this point. So I started looking around in Stellarium, and I came across this conjunction in which Mercury eclipses Mars. Now Mercury the messenger, Mars war, it's saying message war, and that's exactly what the 2 witnesses bring to Earth, because they will be trying to kill them. So 1,260 days from September 16th winds up on February 27th. We use the same 17-hour day, 7 hours shorter, and it brings it back into alignment with this sign. It is exactly to the day, 1,260 days from this sign to this sign. Now 2 days after this sign, we get the moon coming by and stamping the fact that these 2 guys are here. It's saying the 2 witnesses are here at this point. And then 1,260 days from this point, about 4 hours before this eclipse, we get the moon that comes by and eclipses Mercury. Now, it's still just my guess that this is when the 2 witnesses are killed. Now, these signs are not in this video. I made this video about a week before I found these signs, and have you ever had a time when God confirmed something to you? I mean, I kind of stepped out on a limb here because there's still people preaching that these two witnesses show up at the start of the tribulation. No, they don't. There is no reason to have these two witnesses at the start. There are many reasons to have them right where they are. The one main reason is this is where the Bible puts them. They are part of the second woe. They are part of the sixth trumpet. They are not part of any of the seals. And to add to this video, we've got two of the day counts coming from these two signs that wind up on this sign. The two witnesses belong in chapter 11 right where they are. After I found these signs and figured out some of my day counts, I could start on my day count series. These are like a 4-part mini-series without any of your favorite actors. In part 1, I talk about the Hebrew calendar and how I'm counting from the signs. In part 2, I show you a bunch of the day counts. In part 3, I go down and I show this day count. And in part 4, I talk about this sign and the day count, the last one I had that comes from it. If you're new to my videos, I would suggest starting out with what is Revelation 12 and Abomination of Desolation. From there you can kind of bounce around to what section you want to learn about, whether it's Bethlehem's star or the start of the tribulation. This is my newer work over here. Everything with the cross is my newer work. Everything with the space pictures are my older work. Everything's less than a year old. I would suggest watching my days shortened video before you watch my day counts video. This is a lot of work here. This is my most recent work, is my day counts video. I pray for everyone that watches this video that your eyes are open to what I'm showing you here today. God made the sun, the moon, and the stars for signs, and then He told us about some of those signs in the Bible. He also put 10 numbers in both the Old and the New Testament that we use to count between the signs. This same Bible says there's one way to God, and that is through His Son, and then God proves that by putting His Son's sign up in the heavens for us to see. If you have not made the decision to ask Jesus into your life, or you don't know what to do, I guide you through that in this video.